I've always just believed that you can be better. And I think some of us are built more towards always like self-doubt and self-criticism. And some people have way too much where they think their shit don't stink, And we all, if you're a good coach, you got to keep getting better. Right. And so I just invested. There was a class in Minnesota taught by a functional medicine doctor, and you had to go once a month. I think I did 5 of them. And in Minnesota in the winter from like November to like March was miserable.
Yeah.
So I went there and studied, and learned a lot. And then, I would be able to fill in the gaps with Vince helping me on different things. And so really then I just delved into books and texts. And, as I learned one thing, I'm like, oh, well, shit, there's a book on this now. I don't really understand it. Let's go. So I just kept diving in, and that's what I recommend most coaches do here. But yeah, that gives kind of the background of how I kind of, got into doing the functional nutrition side of things.
Actually amazing. Because what I wanted to ask was what year was that when
Yep.
when you first opened your eyes to it?
Yep. So I believe we were in 2017 towards the end.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We went to the Great Lakes Conference, which was put on by Nutridyne. And Vince had been a sales rep for Metagenics, but he met a lot of Nutridyne people and had friends. So we went, and he's like, just come and let's check this out. Like, they're manufacturers, so that maybe they can help with our nutrition products and blah, blah, blah. So I went, and it was all these, doctors and functional medicine practitioners talking about, cholesterol and dysregulated periods and hormonal issues. And I'm like, wow, all this can apply to the fitness industry. And, Vince had already been saying that and been doing it. And so then from that conference, I was like, all right, I got to get educated on this. So I went and talked to the Nutridyne people, and they're like, well, we've got this thing we sponsor with a functional medicine doctor at the chiropractic college. Do that. And I'm like, all right, I'm in. So, I invested that way. But yeah, around 2017.
Obviously, there's a lot of people that have a tendency to keep a closed mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I like to say that a closed mind can't change, right? A closed mind is stagnant. It's stuck where it is. What do you think it is about yourself that just always kept you hungry? Because if I remember correctly, 5 years ago, you were and still are top-notch nutrition coach in the industry, right? What is it do you think is about you that just always kept you hungry to keep learning more?
I believe it's just to be better. Like whether it's me getting on stage, building my body, being a lawyer, whatever it was, I've always just believed that you can be better. And I think some of us are built more towards always like self-doubt and self-criticism. And some people have way too much where they think their shit don't stink, and I'm more towards the, you're not good enough. You're not doing enough. You need to be better. And I wanted to stop being part of the problem. Like, I'd have a woman that would, like you said, the first year diet was easy. And then the next year I'm seeing it getting harder and harder. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. It turns out I wasn't really doing anything wrong per se. I wasn't maybe resting them as much as I should and pulling back here. But I didn't have the understanding of the hormonal system and how it all plays on the thyroid, the gut, I didn't have that info. So I think it's just one of those things where I'm always kind of self-critical and never feel like I'm doing enough or good enough. And so that keeps me searching.
Yeah, I would say I was actually the exact same in that I was always trying to search for new things to help my clients. And, the reality is, I think is when you have a really good relationship with a client, right? They trust you, you trust them, and like, they're doing their job, but stuff still isn't working out in their favor. It's like, what the hell else could be going on? Traditional coaching methods might tell us, oh, well, they're not tracking accurately, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that. Right. And it's like, well, why not just continue to keep learning, keep investigating, keep trying to understand what could potentially be happening? I remember some of the very first, and I didn't even identify them as functional cases back then because I didn't know what a functional case was. But I remember, full-time, I was already full-time contest prepping people for 5 or 6 years in a row. I started in 2010. And the very first cases I started getting were people that were reaching out to me, specifically ladies. And they say, hey, I worked with a contest prep coach last year and I lost my cycle and it's been 8 months and I still haven't gotten it back. And
Yeah.
so I actually started to delve into that. Obviously you're aware, but what was referred to as the female athlete triad, which then was shifted into relative energy deficiency in sport. There was already a bunch of research out there on the topic. And so I just started diving into that. And then I started to make some content about how I was helping women regain their cycles and stuff. And I remember that first year I started doing that, it was like 40 something women over the course of that 1 year that I helped get their cycle back. And
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I know enough to help people get their cycle back. And so for me, that was like the big aha, like somebody needs to focus on health. Somebody needs to prioritize female health. And it was also at the same time where it was like, how aggressive can you push these girls to get them to look the way they need to look to win pro cards? And as a side effect of that, you are compromising their health if you don't know how to do it properly. Right. And, you know, I've heard you say this many a times before, but I think this is a tried and true statement that I think every nutrition coach listening to this needs to really listen to is like, if you are a female physique competitor, you will get hit the absolute hardest. That's natural. You will get hit the hardest out of anybody else that tries to compete. Even men. I think I was in on a conference many years ago. I think it was probably 2015 to 2016. And I heard a couple gentlemen talk, and it was Pete Fitchen
Okay.
and Chris Foz.
Okay.
Pete Fitchen and Chris Foss. They actually did full blood work on themselves before they started prep, and they did full blood work on themselves after they were done with prep. And both of their testosterone completely tanked.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably sub
I think,
200.
yeah, I think Pete said his was down around 100. And I think Chris Foss, he was a bigger, more muscular, you know, maybe genetically predispositioned to be a bigger guy anyway. But, you know, his testosterone, I think it was like still sliced in half. And they both got to stage lean and all of that. And that was the first introduction that I had to actually being able to say, I've identified an issue. I can solve something. What were like some common issues that you were seeing a lot of?
You know, I was seeing a lot of like obviously metabolic resistance, you
Yeah.
know, but to go deeper there, you know, I would get a lot of inquiries like you about loss of period, but you know, more so extreme sluggishness, maybe inability to sleep. You know, people would come to me for that. So, you know, I think that in this sport kind of is the main areas, the periods, the sluggishness, and then the weight gain, you know, like if hormones are dysregulated, thyroid's taking a hit, you know, there's weight gain. So I think, you know, those areas to me always kind of said, all right, I need to take a step back here. And so then eventually I just developed I started using a metabolic stress questionnaire, and pretty much, well, not pretty much everyone that comes in the door or even inquires to me, I have them fill that out.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes into depth about gut health and, you know, uh, adrenal health. It doesn't say that, but it asks the question, sluggish, this, that, anxiety. It goes through the whole body. And so I have a pretty good idea after I read that, almost what's going on without even seeing labs. But it tells me, all right, okay, they're not sleeping well. Okay, their gut's messed up. Okay, they're craving. All right, they're sluggish. I know those are like the main things, and I see it time and time again. And it's kind of just a pattern, you know, that kind of keeps circulating.
Yeah, I would definitely say the MSQ allows you to basically target lock in on where you need to focus kind of
Correct.
immediately. There's still a lot of coaches out there in the industry right now that, and in all fairness, you have to be extremely intelligent to work with a lot of these cases. You got to know your stuff.
Yeah.
So don't come in trying to fake it. You have to develop experience over the course of time. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people are, you know, signing up new clients, and a lot of these clients have some type of metabolic problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're never having them complete an MSQ. They're never even asking them about their gut health. They're
Nope.
never asking them about their fatigue and their lethargy and insulin resistance. They're not asking about any of this stuff,
No.
right? So how valuable do you think it is for a nutrition coach to be able to basically come in and say, I have a client coming in. We need to clearly decide, are they a functional case, or can we just put them in a calorie deficit
Right.
like everybody else and treat them like everybody else? How valuable do you think that MSQ is in basically finding that client the right home?
it's extremely valuable, and so much so that I teach it to all my mentees.
Mhm.
Because before I had that process, if someone came to me and said, "Oh, I've been eating 2,000 calories and I want to cut," I'm like, "Okay, you probably done what you need to do. Let's
Mhm.
go ahead and cut." Well, again, I'd be 50% successful if it was a female.
Yep.
Men, again, men aren't, hormones drop with stress, but it doesn't usually create the issues where they don't bounce back. You can reverse a man after a prep, and usually his testosterone is going to come back, and he'll be fine. But the reverse doesn't always work for women. I'll get clients that come to me and say, yeah, my coach did everything right, like pulled the cardio, we reversed, we got my calories up, but I still can't cut. And so, it's like, all right, here's the MSQ. Let's see how your internal health is really going. So for me, it's hugely important because it saves frustration for the client too. And I can say, hey, listen, like the score on here is over 50. You've got the XYZ. We need to investigate this further. You are not healthy to cut.
Right.
And, occasionally I lose the client. They go, okay, thanks. And I never hear from them again. And, I'm sure they went and found someone who's $200 a month who will give them some macros and put them on 2 hours of cardio and maybe T3 and tons of clean and, overcome it. But then it's just worse the
Right.
next time they come off. So it for me, it was a game changer, and it's hugely important.